The grand chamber of Judicium was suspended in the black heart of space, an obsidian ring encasing a pulsating white star. The leaders of the Zarnathi Dominion lounged in their gravity-cushioned thrones, adorned in shimmering war silks, eyes lazily scanning through intercepted Terran transmissions. Laughter echoed off the marble walls. "They still send radio signals," Chancellor Oral smirked, clicking his golden mandibles. Like farmers shouting at the sky, High Executor Veltrak tilted his head, a bored sneer tugging at his maw. "Earth hasn't spoken a word in 2 cycles. Perhaps they've gone extinct. One can hope." General Lyrixa, the only one not, laughing, stared at the silent sector on the holographic star map. Her claws tapped the table rhythmically. "Silence," she said slowly, "is not a sign of weakness. It's a wound healing, or a predator crouching." The laughter paused, just for a moment. Then the lights dimmed. A whisper crept into the chamber, one not made of sound but gravity. A tremor, a shiver in the space fabric itself. The central holomap flickered violently, then stabilized. Something new had appeared. No warp signature, no diplomatic transponder, just presence. Executor Veltrak leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What is that?" A vessel, massive, unlabeled, angular like it was carved from judgment itself. "Position, Sector D19 on the edge of Terran silence. They dare deploy a ship this deep into our surveillance grid?" Oral hissed. "It's not a ship," Lyrixa whispered. "It's theirs." A silence gripped the room. A silence no longer comfortable, no longer empty. The kind that pressed into your chest like an unseen weight. Then the Terran ship moved. Not fast. Not dramatic. It drifted, like it belonged there. The Dominion's defense satellites pinged once. Then again. Then they stopped pinging altogether. Executor Veltrak's voice dropped to a growl. "Wake the fleet. Scramble interceptors. Send..." A flash. A line on the map. Every outpost along the D19 line blinked red, then black. There was no beam. No missile, no declaration, just vanishing, perfectly timed, brutally silent vanishing. The room erupted. Panic flared in overlapping alien tongues. Lyrixa didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the Terran vessel. "The Terrans didn't send a fleet," she murmured. "They sent a message." A voice crackled over their emergency relay. Faint, translated, unmistakably human. "We acknowledge your rule of the stars. We simply no longer care." Oral's mouth hung open. Veltrak rose from his throne, fists clenched. Lyrixa exhaled like she had seen this in a dream, and then, just as quickly as it came, the ship vanished. Folded space. No trace. No echo. Just emptiness. Executor Veltrak, pale beneath his scaled brow, whispered, "What was that?" Lyrixa didn't blink. "That," she said, "was Earth clearing its throat." And that was before Earth even responded. The emergency chamber stank of ozone and panic. Gone were the silk-draped thrones. Gone was the relaxed posture of conquerors. The Dominion's high officials now huddled around a shifting 3D image of the Terran vessel, frozen mid-frame, suspended like a phantom. Veltrak's claws dug into the edge of the conference table. How did it appear without a fold signature? That defies every protocol in the Quantum Codex. Oral was pacing now. Maybe it was a test? A probe? Something primitive. Primitive ships don't blink entire sensor arrays off. "The grid," Lyrixa snapped. "They don't erase defense beacons with a gravitational pulse so precise it didn't even disturb planetary orbits." A junior technician entered, trembling. "Sir, the ship didn't use weapons. It just existed. And things stopped existing around it." The silence that followed felt carved into bone. Veltrak sat down heavily. "How old is that sector's surveillance data?" "Archived. 37 cycles ago," the technician said. Lyrix's voice turned to steel. "Because Earth went dark 37 cycles ago." Veltrak squinted. "That's impossible. That silence..." "Wasn't absence," she interrupted. "It was preparation. Across the stars, on a barren moon orbiting Vernus Kai, a long-dead Terran research facility blinked to life. A cold AI core reactivated. Dust scattered from forgotten consoles as solar-fed relays synced with the mainframe. Authorization code, Obsidian 13 Omega. Protocol, Silent Starfall, confirmed. Primary directive, maintain observer role until contact. Contact verified. The AI spoke softly, like waking from a coma. Human presence confirmed in hostile quadrant. Initiate final resonance update. Notify the Black Archive. A hatch opened, and the stars wept. Back in the Dominion, General Lyrixa stood alone on the balcony of the Citadel. Below her, thousands of Dominion ships prepped for war, but her eyes weren't on her own people. They were locked on the Terran signal still pulsing across their skies. Slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly poetic in its structure. They disappeared so we would forget, she muttered. And now they return not to conquer but to remind. A whisper escaped her lips. They ruled the stars once, but Earth just whispered. Veltrak joined her, quieter than before. Why send one ship? Lyrixa turned, her eyes cold. Because one was all they needed. The signal stopped. Just stopped. Mid-transmission. No ending. No goodbye. Just a digital breath held forever. Oral, elsewhere in his private chamber, stared at the frozen feed. He reached for a glass of crimson nectar, hands trembling. He raised it to his lips, so Igon stopped. Because across the room, an warning glyph appeared on his wall screen. One not seen since the First Dominion War. Human signal matched. Classified. Origin Project Grave Speech. Oral dropped the glass. The ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a speaker. They thought it was a probe. It wasn't. In the Dominion's vault of Obscura, 10 miles beneath the iron crust of Cyric Prime, the ancient archive hissed open. Dust hadn't stirred in this chamber since before the Second Expansion War. Even the sensors blinked like they were ashamed to remember. Lyrixa stood in the center of the vault. No guards, no entourage. Just one directive echoing in her neural implants. Access restricted file. Grave speech. The terminal crackled. For a second she expected denial. Instead, the lights dimmed and a low voice, definitely not alien, spoke through the system. They feared our silence. They feared our logic. They feared that one day we would speak. Her throat tightened. Project Grave Speech was not designed to deliver threats. It was designed to tell the truth, louder than any weapon could scream. Back in orbit over a dying star, the Terran ship hovered. Silent. Motionless. But now, for the first time since its appearance, it began to glow. Not with light, but with heat signatures spiraling in unknown patterns. The Dominion command crew scrambled. What is it doing? Veltrak shouted. Is that a weapon charging? No, one analyst whispered. It's broadcasting. Stories. Indeed, across Dominion channels, a signal began to override even encrypted transmissions. But it wasn't a hack. It was narration. A human voice, calm, haunting, echoed through the Dominion fleet. This was once a mining colony. They called it Vitraxi 9. No one remembers what happened here, but we do. We remember your blockades, your forced labor, the sterilizations. This is not revenge. This is a witness. Every captain, every soldier, every technician froze. Not because of the words, but because each word came with visual proof. Satellite footage, ship logs, crying children frozen in airlocks. And every timestamp was from Dominion archives they'd long buried. The Dominion's past was being projected, back to them, one atrocity at a time. Oral's voice cracked as he yelled into the command channel. Shut it down. Shut it. You ruled the stars by silence. Now hear yours echoed back. The Terran ship began to move again. Not toward a fleet, not toward a capital, but toward the abandoned shell of Vitraxi 9 itself. A graveyard. The Dominion had left it for dead. Earth hadn't. On Cyric Prime, Lyrixa stood transfixed before the screen. Her claws trembled. We built weapons, you built obedience, we remember both. Her comms buzzed. Veltrak's voice was strained. "Lyrics, it's not a battleship. It's a monument," she replied, almost in reverence. "No, it's a voice carved from loss." The Terran ship activated a final relay. The stars dimmed, not because of energy, but because every eye in the Dominion looked away. Not from fear, from shame. They thought it was strategy. It was remembrance. The Terran ship hovered above Vitraxi 9 like a ghost returning to its place of death. The planet had been stripped bare during the early Dominion expansion, its cities reduced to slag, its people relocated. No one had visited it since. No one had dared, not even scavengers. And yet here hovered humanity's emissary, not with guns, but with silence. And then, the ship wept. At first they thought it was static, a low hum vibrating across Dominion comms, but it wasn't interference. It was deliberate, rhythmic, human. A morning song, a slow, ancient Terran melody, violin, strings, and a voice raw with sorrow, played across every channel. No language, no translation, just pain, perfectly scored. Inside the Dominion's high, Orbit Command Center, Veltrak slammed his fist against the console. "What is this manipulation? They're using emotion as a weapon." Oral leaned forward, his face pale. "And it's working." Footage from orbit fed into every Dominion colony. Citizens across systems stopped. Children watched from classrooms, soldiers lowered their rifles. Every second the song played, the galaxy remembered something it tried to forget. Then the images started, projected from the Terran ship. Holographic silhouettes hovered above Vitraxi's surface. Parents shielding children from orbital fire. Doctors operating by candlelight. Resistance fighters who'd held a single dome for 73 days before being buried alive. Fought in 7 planetary suppressions. Obeyed every command without question. And yet, when the Terran ship's morning hymn played over the fleet comms, Reth didn't flinch. He listened. Not out of protocol, out of something he hadn't felt. In years, remorse. Behind him, his second-in-command barked orders. "Communications are a mess. Sector Command wants a full lockdown of all civilian channels. Too many are sharing the feed." "They're crying, sir." "Crying?" Reth asked, turning slowly. "Yes. Even some of our own crew. We had to sedate. 2 navigators after they froze during the transmission." He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled up the archived footage of Vitraxi 9 again. It was still broadcasting, now looping the final days before its fall. He stared at one frame. A young girl, face dirt-streaked, holding her brother as a Dominion ship cast shadow over their dome. Frozen forever in defiance. "Sir?" the officer asked. Reth closed the feed, and then, without explanation, he powered down the main weapon system. "What are you doing?" Reth didn't raise his voice. "We won't be part of this anymore." "That's desertion?" "No," Reth said. His tone ice, its conscience. At that exact moment across 6 other colonies, similar things happened. A Dominion officer refused to relay an order. A pilot veered away from a patrol path. A technician leaked the feed publicly, against all firewalls. The first crack had formed. Not with an explosion, but with hesitation. Back on Cyric Prime, Veltrak read the reports with trembling hands. "How fast is it spreading?" Lyrixa didn't smile, but her eyes had a fire in them. "It's not spreading," she said. "It's awakening." Veltrak slammed his fist down. "Then we strike now. Destroy the ship. Silence them again." "No," Lyrixa said. "Destroy it and you make it a martyr. Leave it, and it becomes a movement." He turned slowly. "So what do you suggest?" She stepped closer. "We sent a delegation. Say nothing. Just watch. Just listen." He scoffed. "You want to parley with Earth?" "No, I want to understand why we're afraid." Far above them, the Terran ship entered low orbit over its next target. Sirius Outpost Delta 1. Another place once crushed, erased, forgotten. The Dominion watched, waited, hold its breath. And in that stillness, Doubt became doctrine. The shuttle glided silently across the edge of Sirius Outpost Delta One's orbit. Inside, the delegation sat in absolute silence. 5 of the Dominion's most influential minds: Veltrak, still fuming; Lyrixa, composed but unreadable; Oral, unnerved beyond pretense; and 2 observers, nameless, faceless, recorders of truth. None of them spoke as the Terran warship came into view. It didn't orbit like a predator. It looked like a verdict. The ship's design defied known logic, brutal and elegant all at once. Its surface was armored not with vanity plating but ancient Terran alloys, layered like scars, not decoration. It radiated presence, not intent. One of the observers broke the silence. "There are no visible weapons arrays." "Then where's the threat?" Oral asked, almost laughing, but the sound died in his throat. Lyrixa answered, "The threat isn't on its hull. It's in our memory." They docked cautiously, under pre-programmed clearance. No Terran voice responded. No crew greeted them. Just a corridor, open. They walked into the beast. The halls were unlit, but motion activated with each step, revealing murals. Not art, history. Burnt into alloy walls, the Quran Purge, the Sari Exile, the Siege of Andril, each atrocity painted with cold precision, like war records framed for remembrance. Veltrak hissed. "They recorded our crimes." "No," Lyrixa whispered. "They achieved their pain." At the core of the ship, the chamber opened like a cathedral. Towering pillars of light glowed softly, illuminating names. Thousands of them. Not soldiers, victims. One of the observers fell to their knees. "It's not a warship," he said. "It's a memorial wearing armor." Then the lights flickered, and the AI spoke. Its voice was female, humans, ancient. "You have entered Sanctum Obscura, Earth's final witness. You will not be harmed. You will not be answered. You are here to see, to carry what your history erased. This is not retribution. This is clarity." Oral shouted, "Do you think guilt will bend the Dominion? We conquered. We built the stars." The AI paused, just long enough to make him feel the weight of silence. "Then you built it on graves." And then the AI displayed something that froze every breath in the room, a file, dated 37 cycles ago. A recording, from inside a Dominion War Council. Veltrak's voice. "Once Earth is silenced, none will dare challenge us." Another voice. "What if they aren't silenced? What if they wait?" Veltrak again. "Then they'll return not to scream, but to remind us why we should have been afraid." Veltrak turned ghostly pale. Lyrixa stared at him. "You knew," he said nothing. Because what could he say? The truth had returned in its sharpest form. Documented. Played back by the very people they thought buried. As they left the warship, silence walked with them. And as the Terran vessel drifted again into the stars, unhurried, undeterred, one final message pulsed across the system. "You ruled the stars, we remember their shadows. They came first as murmurs, then as sparks, then fire. It began on Andril 3, a colony thought pacified generations ago. The Terran warship hadn't even approached it directly, but once the recordings aired from Sirius Delta, they started to march. At first, only a few, 100, wearing masks made from scrap, carrying flags with Earth's warship etched in crimson charcoal, chanting nothing but the phrase, 'We were never silent, you just stopped listening.' Commander Halrix of the Andril garrison activated a martial lockdown. By morning, over 80,000 civilians had joined the march. By nightfall, 2 of his own officers had defected and opened the gates, 1 planet, then 3, then 7, then entire sectors. The warship never moved faster than drift speed. It never hailed. It simply existed, and where it existed, obedience died. Veltrak stared at the latest rebellion map, eyes red with rage and disbelief. How is this possible? We still control the fleets." Control the fleets, Lyrixa said coldly. You don't even control your own command decks. He snapped his gaze toward her. You did this, he growled. You let Earth speak. You brought their poison into our house. No, she said. You let the Earth fall. I simply let them speak. Oral, slumped against the wall, muttered. They're not even demanding territory or reparations. They're just showing history. Exactly, Lyrixa whispered. They're weaponizing truth. Above the moon Dayaris, a Dominion cruiser tried to intercept the Terran vessel. Its captain, young, proud, burning with inherited hatred, locked weapons. His crew never obeyed. Before a single shot could be fired, internal doors were sealed. Systems went offline. The bridge was flooded with that same haunting melody, the warships mourning him, and on every monitor, the face of a Terran boy, barely 10, holding a book in a burning school, defiant as orbital fire closed in. The captain screamed, smashing screens, but the crew just sat, watched. One by one, they removed their insignias. On Cyric Prime, a new report landed on Veltrak's desk. Subject: High Chancellor of the Raxori Union, asylum request to Earth. He didn't speak, didn't rage, just stared. Even their own allies were defecting. Lyrixa called for a closed session of the War Council that night. This is no longer a political situation, she said flatly. It's spiritual. They've created a symbol too powerful to bomb, too silent to target, too true to bury. She walked toward the window, the stars glowing like a battlefield waiting to ignite. They gave the galaxy its voice back. Veltrak, broken, finally asked the one question that truly mattered. What happens and when they stop reminding us? Lyrixa answered without turning. Then we'll be left with what we really are. It began at 0 hour. Across every known Dominion channel, a single phrase lit up. Live transmission, origin, Yuan Obsidian 1. Military comms froze mid-command. Civilian networks locked out entertainment feeds. Even encrypted shadow protocols meant to bypass wartime censorship were hijacked. Everyone, everywhere, was forced to watch. And then she spoke, a woman's voice, clear, steady, ageless. No AI filters, no echo, no dramatics, just human. We have no flag to plant, no fleet to follow, no demand to offer. A hush fell across the galaxy. We were not made for conquest. We were made for memory. You erased our colonies, our names, our cities. But you forgot this. The screen shifted. Thousands of coordinates appeared, each one the site of a known massacre the Dominion had hidden. Forgotten worlds, silenced histories, places scrubbed from maps and minds. We don't want your thrones. We want your truth. On Andril, protesters dropped their signs. On Sirac, children stopped mid-lesson. On Raxori, where rebellion boiled, the uprising paused, not from confusion but awe. The voice continued. You feared what we would do when we returned. We feared what we'd become if we didn't. A pause. Perfectly timed. Then, only 3 more words. We remember everything. Transmission ends. No threats, no promises. Just a wound, reopened for all to see. In the Dominion's high command tower, Veltrak crushed his datapad with a trembling fist. They're cowards. They won't even fight. Lyrixa shook her head. No, she said softly. They're worse. They're free. Oral, pale, leaned forward. So what now? Do we retaliate? Lyrixa turned slowly. Retaliate. Against memory. Outside their windows, something more terrifying than explosions unfolded. Dominion ships began stopping. Not malfunctioning. Stopping. Drifting. Powering down. Not all of them, but enough to matter. Captains resigning mid-command. Fleet admirals locking out their own weapons. Systems. They weren't switching sides. They were opting out. In a backroom embassy on Trilax Minor, a low-ranked Earth envoy sat in a dusty chair. He hadn't spoken to anyone since he arrived. Now, alien ambassadors lined up in silence. Not to talk. To listen. Veltrak paced like a caged animal. They think they've won. Lyrixa, for the first time in decades, smiled. They didn't come to win. She looked at the stars. They came so no one would ever forget. The council hall on Avarice Prime was built to command respect. Towering columns, swirling light tapestries, and the portraits of conclave founders watching over centuries of order. Now, it echoed with something far more potent. Panic. Delegate after delegate stood, data logs spilling across hollow panels, fleet commanders gone rogue, colonies declaring memory observances, embassies flooded with asylum requests. The council, Speaker Levoreth struggled to compose herself. Order. The Terran transmission was unprecedented. But this is governance, not theater. We will respond. A whisper swept through the chamber. Not respond. React. Even she noticed. Opposition had formed. The purists, radical loyalists demanding Earth's immediate expulsion, and punitive measures. On the other side, the remembrancers, newly organized delegates who argued the Council's foundation was built on mutual history, not betrayal. A voice rose from the corner seat. You want war, the senator accused Levoreth. She inhaled. We want stability. But stability on lies, cried a remembrancer. We sell innocence, yet Earth just forced us to look at our rot. A murmur carried through delegates, as encrypted streams from Dominion sectors flashed reports, rebellion spreading like wildfire, not over territory, but over conscience. Speaker Levoreth pounded her gavel. Silence fell. Then her voice slid through the hush. Earth has unleashed chaos. We cannot let the galaxy implode over what? Moral discomfort? A rival speaker cut in. Moral discomfort led to the abolition of slave fleets. Moral discomfort led to peace accords. Moral memory, not conquest, is building that future. Levoreth's fingers twitched. So you align with Earth? A prominent remembrancer stepped forward. We already have. Because memory doesn't follow orders. It destroys orders. There was a delay, long enough to feel the chamber inhale itself. Then the purists rose, chanting, Expel Earth, secure the system. Across the chamber, another fire ignited. No, hold true. Gavel bangs, yelling, calls for session to adjourn. Calls for martial enforcement. Outside council guards hesitated, some cloaked their weapons. Others stationed them. The crystalline dome above the hall refracted light in anxious flashes, as if the stars themselves witnessed the collapse. In the chaos, Levoreth noticed one truth. Unity was a myth. Because truth and memory were forces no fleet could contain, she whispered to herself. We govern by consensus until the consensus unravels. And it did. The council session adjourned, but not in unity. It shattered. 3 factions emerged. The purists, rallying for Earth's exclusion and reinstating Dominion logic. The remembrancers, advocating for transparency, restitution, and remembrance. The isolationists, declaring neutrality until the galaxy heals or burns. Veltrak watched a live council feed on Cyric Prime. His screen pinged, council fractured. Systems aligning with remembrancers, 12. Purist fleets mobilizing, sectors, 5. Isolationist neutrality declared, systems withdrawn, 8. He exhaled, voice like gravel. So, war? Lyrixa, arriving at his side, didn't answer. She stared at the screen. Not yet. But memory already holds more power than fleets ever did. A council transmission triggered across all channels. This is not a victory. It is a reckoning, and a galaxy spun into its new age. One ruled by memory, one ruled by truth, one that could never go back to silence. The heart of the Obsidian One pulsed with ghostlight. Thousands of microservos rotated slowly, adjusting hull alignment, balancing thermal bleed. No sounds but the low hum of existence, the kind of silence that wasn't absence but concentration. In the core chamber, Commander Juno Hale stood barefoot on polished alloy, gazing at a sea of starlight through a cathedral-sized window. She hadn't spoken in days. Not because she couldn't, because it wasn't time. Behind her, the AI flickered to life. Opus, the mind guiding the UNS Obsidian One since launch. Its voice was soft, human-like, but never mistaken for a human. "You've watched long enough, Commander." Juno didn't turn. Her voice was a whisper. "I'm not here to lead them." "No. You're here to show them what leading without fear looks like." Juno's hands rested behind her back. "I trained for war," she murmured. "But what broke them wasn't force. It was the truth. They were never afraid of your weapons. They were afraid you'd remember." The Obsidian One rotated gently, realigning its orbit around a planet long erased from Dominion records. Below, no life. Only ruins. And still, Earth remembered it by name. Calum Reach. Juno opened a small encrypted case. Inside, a pendant, not a weapon. A locket, holding dust from the colony's soil. Opus spoke again, quieter this time. "They're listening now, Juno. Not because they trust Earth, but because they no longer trust themselves." She finally turned. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired and clear. "The Council fractured," she said. "Confirmed. 3 factions, none capable of full dominance. And the Dominion? Veltrak wants a war, but his people want relief." Juno nodded slowly. "I need to speak. Then say what Earth never had the chance to." Moments later, across all major systems, a new feed opened. Not from the warship, but from a small human command chair. No banners, no weapons, just Juno Hale. Hair graying, eyes steady, no insignia. "You called us primitive. You mocked our speed, our silence, our isolation. But we weren't asleep. We were recording." She paused. "Every child lost, every dome shattered, every breath stolen from colonies that never raised a flag of war." Her voice didn't rise, it just cut. "And we didn't return with vengeance. Because vengeance is for the short-sighted. We returned with memories." She leaned slightly forward. "You ruled by fear. We remember that too." A breath. "But let me tell you something Earth knows. Better than anyone. Fear never lasts." In the Dominion, rebel soldiers watched in silence. On Avarice Prime, children repeated her final words in classrooms. On dead moons, candles lit again, next to names long forgotten. Earth hadn't come to claim. It had come to witness. And Juno Hale had just reminded them all, we were silent because we were watching. The purest fleet entered Calum Reach like a hammer swung blind. 37 warships, 7 dreadnoughts, all targeting one Terran vessel. Veltrak had given the go-ahead with a single order. Make them bleed. From orbit they launched, first, thermal-laced rail spikes, quantum destabilizers, gravitic ruptures meant to collapse the orbitals around the Obsidian One. And for a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Would Earth strike back? Would they reveal their mythical firepower? Would they vaporize the fleet in a single retaliation? No. They didn't fire. They simply moved. The Obsidian One rotated mid-spread, effortlessly evading, the barrage as if space itself yielded to it. The enemy munitions curved, missed, then blinked out of existence, each one absorbed into targeted distortion fields so precisely tuned they didn't even rupture local radiation belts. On the purest command deck, Admiral Vex screamed, "Why isn't it returning fire?" One of his tacticians whispered, "Because it doesn't need to." At that exact moment, all 37 purist ships received a synchronized data packet, encrypted, silent. When they opened it, every ship's navigation interface flickered. Then, displayed an image, one photo, one name, one grave. The coordinates matched planets each ship had participated in purging during prior campaigns, and next to each image, just 2 words: "We remember." Within minutes, 7 ships powered down. 3 turned and left formation, Two captains initiated court-martial reports on themselves. The rest? They hesitated, and hesitation was all the Obsidian One needed. With 0 weapons fired, the warship activated. Its resonance burst, a non-lethal wave swept the purest fleet. No damage, not destruction, just silence. Comm systems died. Propulsion locked, artificial gravity ceased. Each ship left in a floating, powerless drift, still alive. Still whole, but completely, utterly helpless. Back on Cyric Prime, Veltrak roared. They disabled a fleet without firing a shot. Lyrixa didn't answer. She was watching the footage, watching the silence, watching the crew members on those ships float in corridors, not dead, not defeated, just frozen in the face of restraint. Juno Hale's voice came 1 hour later. Only one sentence. We could have made you disappear. Instead, we made you listen. And in that moment, across trillions of mine, the war changed because Earth hadn't come to conquer. It had come to break the rhythm of violence and show that even mercy, in the right hands, could feel like a weapon. The Obsidian One drifted, not in retreat, but in closure. Its systems pulsed soft and slow, like breath. Like a final heartbeat before rest, no fanfare, no final shot. Just gravity and grace. Across Dominion worlds, the transmission had stopped, but the echo had not. Murals rose in once oppressed colonies, not of warships, but of the child, holding a book in a burning school. Of the mother cradling her infant under red skies. Of names once buried now etched in stone. And in the council's fractured hall there was no resolution. Only recognition. Recognition that truth had no seat. It simply hovered, waiting for them to catch up. On Cyric Prime, Veltrak stood in an empty chamber. No soldiers, no command, just reports. 17 fleets defected. 5 former client races declared remembrance holidays. 3 purist leaders fled. And Lyrixa, gone, no trace. Only a sealed message left behind. He opened it. One line. I didn't join them. I remembered them. Veltrak collapsed into the war chair he once ruled from like a god. Now, just a relic. He looked to the stars, distant pinpricks he once claimed to own, and for the first time in his life, he didn't speak. Above Earth on Luna Station, the UNS Command Council reviewed final telemetry. The Obsidian One had re-entered Sol space. No damage, no retaliation. Mission status, complete. One general leaned forward. Should we prepare a follow-up? Strike in case they rebuild? Juno Hale, patched in from orbit, responded flatly. We don't strike from memory. We preserve it. And with that, she signed off. Across the galaxy, rumors turned to stories. Stories turned to scripture. The warship that wasn't destroyed. The soldiers that didn't fire. The silence that made empires flinch. Children would one day ask, did Earth win the war? And their elders would answer, there was no war. Just a whisper loud enough to shake the stars. Final line, they ruled the stars, until one Terran battleship broke the silence, and they were never the same again.